Hello, man. Thank you for joining us here for this conversation. Yes, so what is self-organization?
Well, the word says it all, nothing at all. The organization of the self. Um, the first thing that comes to mind is, well, clearly we are referring to a group of people. But then the question is, who are these people? Why are they doing anything together? So this brings to mind perhaps intentionality. I don't aim to define what self-organization is, but perhaps things that come to mind when I think of self-organization. Um, Bottom up, the hmm, bottom up organization, how individuals um, freely acting uh, get together to accomplish something that perhaps is different than what they initially thought it'll be. Another word that comes to mind is do-ocracy, in the sense that doer decides, um, on how that contrasts with democracy, which there is a process um, that through votation eventually results in the enforcement of a collective decision. Now, as I say that, I start thinking of primitives for coordination, in which I can imagine, or I observe different mixes of do-ocracy and democracy. Another word that is popping to mind is extitutions or extitutional dynamics. And extitutional dynamics as opposed as institutional dynamics. Institutional dynamics being, or an institution being, the roles and rules that participants follow, versus um, the emergent dynamics that appear in any interpersonal relation and context. Maybe through extitutional dynamics, we can look at how groups nudge, or individuals in groups nudge each other into action, into inaction. So, yeah, it's self-organization says it all and nothing at all.
Yeah. So institutional, you would explain this as like a more emergent without this like central idea or sort of like guiding principles and rules.
No, I think that in any situation, there are institutional and exstitutional dynamics. Well, I don't think that institutional dynamics are always in place. But even within institutions, there are always exstitutional dynamics, which is outside of the role that people may have in the institution, like supervisor and supervisee. Then they're going to be talking about something else during lunchtime. And maybe they form a friendship, and that friendship is going to affect the decisions that the supervisor makes. So that affects the institutional dynamics from outside of the institution.
And so would you say that it's good that like both dynamics are present, or do you think there should be a lot more of the bottom up, which is more like this extitutional rather than from the inside, or like the top of the organization?
Well,
Or how would you balance it?
I cannot say that it's good or bad. Um, I would say that extitutional theory gives us a lens to look at how groups of people behave, and puts it very close to how groups of people coordinate through very specific rules. So it's kind of, an institution is a verbal construct. It's a set of fictions that we decide to abide by. It's kind of like assuming a role in a theatrical play, and then we follow very closely, and then at any point there are the extitutional dynamics that cannot be removed from the equation. Now, some reflections from different workshops around this topic. I became aware that it seems to me that the institutional or the institutions emerge to limit the damage that extitutional dynamics may have. Like the institutional scaffolding is put in place to limit some effects of extitutional dynamics. Like someone wants to benefit from deceiving someone else. So yeah, that's something that is happening outside of the supposed protocol that these people should follow in a given context. So, or if there is no protocol, well, we are just a group of people, we're sharing food, someone is taking more food than others without contributing anything. So yes, let's set a rule of you can only take if you contribute, or if you take too much and don't contribute, then there is a reason for you to be invited to not participate in this group.
And you have to wash your plates and whatever else, and then becomes that kind of the institution of this house.
So it may start with habits that are unspoken, rituals that become very present in everyday life, or then you can go up to corporations or nation states.
Yeah, and so it's in Switzerland, the most basic one would be an association, right? So they talked about how easy it is to form an association here. We just need a single document and 3 people to sign it.
2 people.
Or 2 people.
2 people.
Okay, it's even less.
Yes. This is something that I observe in communities that have been exploring technologies for resolving human organization. That it seems to me that there was this aspiration to resolve a number of human problems through technological solutions. And I think there is so much that on-chain tooling can give us, because many of the coordination happens completely off-chain. It's in conversations, it's during dinner. Even if there are no formal votes, how are you going to resolve disputes? Are you going to always use some form of decentralized dispute resolution mechanism with people that don't have the context of what happened and why it might have happened? So back to self-organization, it also seems to me that it requires that people are capable of looking at what are the small and big aspects of what end up becoming the social situation, and each one individually, and perhaps having spaces where collectively this any issue or not issue, like to give legibility and transparency to the social tapestry of what's moving whom. And as I say this, another word comes to mind, and is decentralization, or the lack of it. There is a very famous essay called Tyranny of Structurelessness that claims that when you have a decentralized movement, there is tyranny, because underlying this supposed decentralization there are structures that emerge and are not legible, but they still have power over individuals, and that conforms the power dynamics, how people nudge each other into action, inaction, who has space in a conversation to raise their voice, to be heard, to inoculate ideas onto others. So it seems to me that we cannot avoid the inherent asymmetries of
Power, information.
information. Like if you have a conversation between three people, you probably don't have the three people talking at the same time. You may have one person talking more than other, but there might be good reasons for that. In this situation, you're asking a few questions and speaking a lot, but we don't want to have this uniformly distributed time of conversation, because there is an intended goal that is not that we're just you are asking me questions, so you want to know what I have in my mind. So by it seems to me that by making it very legible what are the asymmetries, and when these asymmetries are beneficial or detrimental, it gives individuals the capacity to self-regulate themselves. Oh, I'm speaking too much in a group where everyone may want to voice something, or to create space for others.
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say how this relates to like when you have clear roles or not clear roles, like in conferences, you have the panel moderator, and even though like okay, everybody is equal, like on some level, this person is given power to like interrupt to other speakers and like change the subject, whatever else. Like in this context, they have this full control over this conversation. But when it's a group discussion, it's like not on a conference. It becomes a lot harder to moderate because nobody feels like they have the power to tell one person like, "Hey, you should like you speak too much," and it becomes more like goes to the individual level when it's up to the people to figure out, oh shit, I'm speaking too much. But not everyone is good at seeing like being so like
I believe it's
reflective.
possible to cultivate self-moderation, being very aware of how your behavior, your actions are impacting others, and that's always the case. Also, when having conversations in a group, to notice when someone is talking perhaps too much and very gracefully, letting them know that, hey, maybe we can let some time for those that feel a bit shyer to express their voices, or to be observant of when those people that perhaps are they have less social capital in a group, and noticing that they seem to have something they want to say but they don't bring themselves to start speaking, say, hey, I noticed that you seem to be thinking something, would you like to share it? So I believe that there can be this very distributed moderation happening, but then sometimes things are not so peaceful, and you may want to have an appointed group of people that are going to be mediating for resolving conflicts. Or if you have a conversation that prolongs for hours and hours, then those who are going to be willing to stay there for hours and hours will get away with, if that conversation is about making a decision, they may get away with what they want, which is, again, this might be a negative effect of do-ocracy. Someone is very committed to getting something done their way, and they're going to put everything necessary to make it their way. Maybe it's just an art project, and you don't want to be told how you're going to be doing your art project, but maybe you're going to be deciding on how you're going to be managing the power supply of a camp in Burning Man, but you don't have the skills. And so maybe you trying very hard to do things your way may be detrimental to the outcome of the group. How do we deal with those? You can imagine that we can set some institutions, some protocols to cut some conversations short, to, rather than expecting that everyone is going to have this capacity to self-regulate and to feel confident to ask someone to stop talking, are going to be put in place. So, hey, look, there is a protocol. You're not following the protocol. You cut it short. It's more effective. But then there is another essay, which is The Tyranny of Tyranny, that says,
that was
well, but structure is inherently tyrannical. So to not solve fire with fire, you will just end up with more fire, because you end up with the institution and the executional practices, dynamics that this we also see. Regulation is put to prevent malpractice and tax evasion, but those who want to evade taxes, they find their way. So I would not want to advocate for leaning more towards setting protocols and rules and roles, or banishing all rules and just letting those that have more social capital or that are better at reading people's emotions direct the group. But the reality is that we cannot not influence, that with every action or inaction we are affecting others. So I believe that each individual has responsibility for what they bring onto a group, and it might be on the big and the small things. I don't think we have a lot of models as reference for self-organization and healthy do-ocratic practices that scale. While I have found quite useful the extitutional lens, there is not a lot written about it. We also have a lack of tools that are produced for top-down types of organization, of delegation. Someone starts something, then that's the owner of the project. Now you create other roles for others. We're missing tools that facilitate this more bottom-up way of coordinating. We end up using Excel spreadsheets because it gives us a lot of flexibility, but then the usability of a spreadsheet, when you have potentially 50 people to 100 people, they need to know which cells to fill in which
not to touch.
Yeah, it becomes quite complex. Yes.
Yeah, it's hard to balance it like this. Like, as you said, like there's tyranny of structurelessness, but the tyranny of structure, like which is the thing that the people who ended up with the tyranny of structureless started with, like the beginning issue, and how to balance it, especially as a organization or community scales or takes on more complex projects. And yeah, like very often things stay at this do-ocratic level where like there's no, or like there is we have voting, but it's not like clearly defined like what the voting is used for and what it's not used for, and how to decide other things. And yeah, I don't know, like what has in your experience been most effective in yeah, it's hard to say because it also depends on what the actual goal of the
And what are the stakes? So my experience with self-organization has been primarily, and in the past few years, in the being the first one that believes that a festival can happen and being committed to make it happen. And then I have a position of leadership in that festival, but then learning how to activate people and for them to take responsibility, to take leads. But the stakes are, we're having just a celebration during a long weekend. The event is ready to fail. Like, if worst case scenario, we cannot get to the mountain and set up the sound system, well, it's gonna be a pity, but that's about it. I've been playing with the idea of the structure of structurelessness, and it goes back to this idea of bringing legibility to all these forces and dynamics that are affecting everyone at every moment, and cultivating in oneself and in others how to perceive them, how to affect them. And I've tried to do that through inspiration and not through manipulation. And the difference is that I act in the way that I feel it's most appropriate. And at the same time, I disclose all my intentions. And I hope that that's going to inspire people into deciding for themselves. I know that my actions are going to have an impact in the same way that I know that my inaction will have an impact. And I do not try to control the result in people when they witness or they receive the consequences of my actions. Obviously, always try not to harm, but not claiming at the same time knowing what's best. Perhaps I consider that it boils down a lot to aesthetic preferences. I feel that this is going to be a tangent if I open that kind of worms. But on structure of structurelessness is, can we collectively shape our behavior by disclosing what are our intentions, what are our strengths, our weaknesses, when are we trespassing something unknowingly, and have this very honest communication to self-regulate. So in other words, are there practices that can help the virtuous extitutional dynamics to become self-perpetuating and inspiring others into applying them? Or are we always going to require having strong institutions that can at one moment say, we need to intervene, and now you are delegating your agency to a protocol that is going to decide for you, is going to decide what you are going to do or what you're not going to do. So in that sense, an institution feels like it's a failure of effective self-organization, of effective virtuous do-ocracy. But perhaps this is only possible in small scales for projects or missions that have low stakes. I do not know. And I wouldn't claim that I have achieved not even close to what I would imagine if it would be possible to engage in this structure of structurelessness modality of coordinating.
Okay. I want to dig deeper into the decision making side, like if you're trying to keep it collective or decentralized, and then you have like consensus where you have to get everybody to agree on a decision. You have like consent where you need to people to be informed about the proposal, and they have to say they're not like they don't have to like really love it, but they can accept it. And then you have like do-ocracy where anybody can just do anything. And how would you like balance or choose like which decision making to use for different parts of the organization or like different kinds of things?
So again, I can mostly speak from the summer solstice festival, and also realizing that or resolving conflicts that emerge when do-ocracy is applied, especially when two different people want to do the same thing and they differ in their views. I believe that for when I act, I want to have the most informed decision I can, which means that I will probably do some polling. I will talk to people that I know are going to be most impacted by my actions. Because ultimately, even when you have stronger forms of consensus, someone may say, well, no, I'm not going to abide by the consensus. I'm going to do what I want. Then obviously tensions and conflict will mount. But ultimately, people are free and they do what they want because they're not physically moved into doing something. So then it's how people get compelled to do one thing or another. And how much are they willing to risk? So when to apply one model or another, I guess that when you realize that the people that you're coordinating yourself for a given objective are not capable of engaging in this very thoughtful application of their freedom, and then you feel like you need to, if not yourself, but that there should be some way to build consensus or some recommended practices to raise consent. But that brings, well, who's making those recommendations? Is it you or is it you? Is it we? But who is we?
Right.
And then you need to go back to constitutive processes. So today we constitute we-ness. But is that we-ness the same when the third person joins? Oh, there is this paper. You agreed with this paper. But does the paper fully represent the spirit? No, it's going to be a culture that evolves. So, and that's how it becomes tyrannical. People from the past decided something in a given moment, potentially with their best intentions and the best knowledge they had. But conditions change over time, people change over time. And that constitution from the past becomes something that chokes the community.
Do-ocracy.
Yeah.
And okay, so let's zoom out a bit. Like, what drove you to all this? Like, why are you so interested in self-organization? Was it like some life experience that shaped you or like set you in this direction?
So I guess that I've been always engaged with different forms of community. When I was in high school, with online forums and becoming moderator of the forum. Then in my hometown, I was member of a cultural association, and just being engaged with whatever I was, I would eventually become a member of the board, eventually president of the association. Then becoming a bit of internet activist when in Spain they passed a law that allowed the executive power to shut down websites without going through the judges. Feeling very outraged with that. That led to involvement with the 15M, which was the movement that happened just before Occupy, where people were camping on the main squares of every major city in Spain, and believing that the internet was going to really change things. That now that we had the internet, we could be able to expose truth, and people were going to be able to vote better politicians. Then I saw in the assemblies that were happening in the camp in my hometown that, well, there was one guy that was paid by a political party staying in the assembly until 1 a.m. on a Tuesday. So while the process started very inclusive, the entire population went out on the streets, and ask for change, but then I could see why you may end up with a parliament that structure the conversation about certain topics and allocates time to different people. Then quite a few years after that, which resulted in me being a bit burnout with trying to change the world, I came in contact with crypto, and now I really believe this was going to make it.
Now the internet is really going to change.
Now this is going to make it. This really makes it possible for people to have powerful governance tools that cannot be taken down, and it's subversive, and now we can have parallel societies that have their own economies, and as I understood it better, it became clearer to me that these are, again, new power structures, new institutions, maybe institutions that do not require a constitution, but well, it requires a protocol, one protocol, not many protocols, and then you see how the different protocols fight with each other, like in some form of holy wars, and that people still have influence. That is Bitcoin really decentralized? We have few mining pools that have most of the hashing power, so they do have more power than you independent miner. Okay, so and the owners of those few mining pools, they're friends.
Yeah, and also the like distribution of Bitcoin itself, like is one of the most unequal economies in the world.
And you can see that different protocols have, like, the governance happens off chain, but I still believe that, okay, let's try this out, and I started a collective to organize little raves and music events and have philosophical conversations every week. And the money that we were receiving from donations to put in a multisig, and to start experimenting with new forms of governance, of collective organization. Then DeFi came, and it became very difficult to um, um, convince people that this was the right solution, because many of them, some people were already working in crypto, but many other people were locals that had been in the rave scene for quite some time. Yeah, they were super happy to play around with Argent wallet that was subsidizing transactions, and we would play with shit tokens just to show how to transfer tokens. I was super excited. And then, well, what now? For voting, I need to spend $100. So
that was like 2017 with the high prices of transactions and everything.
I think that was mostly when DeFi
Oh yeah, different 2020
arrived.
and
Yeah. So by then, I had been reading a lot about group dynamics by then, and I was becoming a lot more aware of the group dynamics in the collective. So I guess it's been my disillusion with many promises, and realizing that at the end it boils down to being aware of even the tiniest little detail on how I am interacting with my friends, how I show up, how I project my voice to them, how I take space in a conversation. All of that contributes to inviting people to participate in something, or to make them feel pushed away. And I guess it comes from a desire to have honest connections with people, to not try and use extrinsic motivations to get them to behave how I would like them to behave, but to find who are the people that intrinsically they are motivated by similar things to, or visions that motivate me, and walk with them towards potential horizons. And I guess that it has shifted a bit into forms of uh, speculative reality, like exploring together what are potential futures that are desirable, and uh, coordinating ourselves towards bringing them into existence. I have believed that inviting people into this exercise through the celebration of a festival, which is something that you put effort and you see the outcome of that effort right away. And I've seen a number of times people coming to me and saying, wow, this is one of the most meaningful experiences in my life. It
makes it much harder to burn out when you have like these direct feedback loops. That's what I realized with MetaFest as well versus metagame.
Yeah. And that people realize that, oh, I can bring things into existence and I don't need grants from big foundations. It's just bringing my sound system, or bringing my tarps, and making a beautiful space, and having 4 days where I'm going to be getting to know other people and caring for other people and feeling cared for by other people. I have not seen that scaling out of the event, and the weekly gatherings were an attempt to keep alive some of those realizations that people had in those moments of high intensity and excitement. But I think that, and that's one form of institution, like a weekly gathering that's going to church.
Right.
And it requires commitment. And it doesn't seem to me that today's society makes it easy for people to have that degree of commitment, even when they are very aware that it brings something good to their lives, but that if they themselves don't take care of it, it will not be it will not be taken care of by other people. And again, this is low stakes experiments. Um, I guess that a higher stake experiment is Burning Man, but it's limited in time as well. It has nonetheless taught me very important lessons that then I apply in my everyday life and my roles within institutions. And I think it has made me a lot more caring and thoughtful person and contributor to projects and to social contexts of any kind.
Love it. But yeah, so you've been involved with lots of like activist projects, I mean, like anarchist squads, but also institutions, like you worked for the UN. And what is one of the like the was the craziest or funniest or worst experience that you had, or like something that happened?
Well, I guess that the first one that comes to mind was related to the camps in Spain, and how spectacularly it failed when the government asked them, okay, it's very clear that you are unhappy, but what do you want? So they basically took a very amorphous we, the angry people, into we, the people that want this. And I was present in the night where the people that were organizing the camp in my hometown, they were supposedly in contact with the camp in Madrid, and they were going to. The idea was that every camp was going to come up with a list of minimum requirements.
But what kind of camps were these countries?
It was this protest that was called Real Democracy Now, that got coordinated to happen in every city and to finish in front of the city hall. And in Madrid, at the end of that protest, people just stayed and camped. And the next day, it happened in every city. And they were saying, well, we want real democracy now. But that message lasted just 2 days. On the third day, I arrived at the camp, and in the banner, it's legalize marijuana, abolish property. Well, the first day, there was the grandfather taking the microphone and sharing with everyone in the square why they went to the protest, because they felt that there was corruption. And so that alienated the movement very rapidly. And then in particular, when the government kind of ignored that this was happening for some days or weeks, I guess, not weeks, but many days. And eventually they said, okay, you're angry. What do you want? And yeah, apparently all camps were making an effort into coming up with a single proposal, and it failed spectacularly. Every camp came up with different requests, and yeah, even when supposedly the organizers of the camp were in contact with the organizers of another camp in Madrid, which was supposedly the one that was coordinating everything. I don't know what made it so that it fell so spectacularly. But I guess it was, again, one problem of who is we, how do we constitute we-ness, and for which purpose? Is this a new institution that represents the totality of the Spanish citizens? Well, that's very difficult. And there are other institutions that can say, no, we are more we than you are. And yeah, I think that it's crazy that we keep not finding a solution to this question. Who is we? How do we make we? How we update we? And when I say we here, do I mean I? Or am I inviting you to come up with a solution?
But like if they were protesting for direct democracy, like if they just stuck to that, then after they could like put up all these different proposals and everybody could vote on everything. Why didn't they just like continue with the whole like okay, we want
the movement
direct
continued.
democracy?
It continued. It dispersed. It diluted. It resulted in the creation of a new political party. At the moment that started playing in the political game field, it became a political party.
Okay. Got institutionalized.
Yep. So if you play by rules, then the rules shape you. And this is perhaps an invitation to ask ourselves individually, what is it that we aspire to experience with a group of people, for which purpose, and to maybe identify the primitives, the organizational primitives that can be selected for depending which objective. And if anything, I think that it would benefit that we become very observant and aware of these micro elements that affect massively the ultimate outcomes of a group, that one misunderstanding can lead to tremendous downfall, and that perhaps having a number of people that are very silently and gently and gracefully creating spaces for voices to express their opinion can very implicitly and almost invisibly create a higher sense of cohesion than having very strong protocols put in place. But that we should also be aware when we need those protocols, because sometimes shit hits the fan.
You're right. Yeah, hearing protocols for the structure, but then making sure that they're like also they can also in a way be called a protocol, like of having concerns emerge and shape opinions from like bottom up. Yeah. Okay, so then the last question is about Switzerland and Zuitzerland. So yeah, like you've been living in Switzerland your whole life.
No. I moved here a bit more than 11 years ago.
Okay,
So coming from Spain.
then maybe that's also relevant because you were in the democracy now in Spain, and then you came to Switzerland, which is the only direct democracy in the world. And that's what I want to ask you about is like why Switzerland, and what do you think what do you really love about Switzerland, and what do you think that the DAO space or whole network states and like all of us can learn from Switzerland and the way it works?
Well, I came here for work. I stayed for love, and now, well, over time, it became very obvious to me that this is a political anomaly. That direct democracy is just but one manifestation of a cultural background of bottom-up organization, and that had continuity over time. That there was never another institution that arrived here and imposed their top-down conqueror style form of organization. It has surprised me in many ways, but one that comes to mind was realizing that when people feel that they can participate in the decisions that are going to affect their lives, they actually care about the policies that are going to be passed. And having my neighbors that at first I thought, oh, these are people that are always partying, and going to have dinner with them and having very deep conversations about why this policy should be passed or not. It shocked me because I never saw anything like that back in Spain, because, well, the only right you have is to vote for one party or another. So having this capacity to influence actually makes people care. I think it's a very fertile soil for organizational experiments. The cantons and the cities are encouraging grassroots movements and society-driven projects. They call them not private, not public. It's the people. And I'm sure that they will be very interested in many of the conversations that will happen in the context of Zuitzerland. A clear benefit of this country is that maybe it's because it's very small as well. It's very easy to approach people that are currently in a position to launch conversations and processes. And I think maybe we have a lot to learn from how they have organized themselves for so long and preserving certain principles about organizing themselves.
Right? Yeah, they said Switzerland has like a 700 years old history of cooperatives. So there's like this deliberation and talk about policies is kind of like this kind of self-organization, I guess, deeply rooted in culture here and hard to replicate. But
And I think it'll
hopefully we
be
can
very
learn.
difficult to arrive with this set of principles and models to a group of people that do not have the intuitions and say, now you follow this protocol, because no, that comes again top down and doesn't emerge from the individuals having the intuitions, the habits, and the visceral knowledge that no, sometimes I want something to be changed, and I can gather a number of people and launch a proposal that may eventually become federal law. And maybe in DAOs, you can see that kind of engagement that people feel like you can launch a proposal. But the thing is that an organization is a lot more than saying yes or no to a proposal. How you phrase the proposal when you present the proposal. Again, all these small details condition the ultimate result. And I don't think that in the DAO ecosystem, these considerations have been taken. It's been easy to dismiss all these old institutions that don't know shit how to do things the new way. But in fact, they've been managing to resolve a number of disputes. And I think they have encoded a lot of wisdom in them. I don't want to say that it's anything close to perfection, but perhaps it's worth to sit and talk and see again what primitives of organization can be translated, adapted, and combined for specific purposes. And perhaps in the context of network states, well, I think since it's a field to be designed, knowing which tools we have in the toolbox would be very useful to prevent jumping into premature solutions that only seem right, but that they have not been tested to time.
Right. All right. Well said. And thank you. Thank you for joining me here. And it's been great.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.